Welcome to Behind the Brand Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Hayes. To my left is my co-host, Bob Payton with bobpayton.com. Across the table from us today, we have Nicole Beeman-Cadwallader.
Perfect.
Thank you. Welcome to the show. You're with 1 in 5. Tell us about 1 in 5.
Yeah, 1 in 5 is a nonprofit organization, and we catalyze spaces for youth to create mental health supports to support each other. So it's different in that it's engaging the youth in creating the supports, and that it's peer-based.
Okay, so how did this idea, or the genesis of this idea, how was it born?
Yeah, so I have a mental health condition myself, and I was in high school when I had my first mental health crisis. I can talk more about that later. But I remember coming back to school after kind of coming through that and really feeling alone and isolated. And I had friends, but it felt like there was this part of me that I couldn't talk to anyone about. And as I was kind of, in my career about 7 to 10 years ago, I had this aha that I have all this career experience, I have this lived experience, but I'm not really doing anything to leverage those skills in my career. And so I started doing some focus groups with youth and also some research to kind of identify what are the real needs and mental health supports for youth right now. And this wasn't before the pandemic. So this is,
Yep.
I think that kind of cracked things open and made a lot of things obvious to us, but all this is happening well before that. And a lot of youth said, we feel like no one asks us what we want, and we feel like we're alone and we don't have opportunities to help each other. And so that's where this idea came from, that I only have these curriculum design skills. We could leverage those to have the youth design their own supports.
Right.
Nice.
So how do you implement a program like this? And how are you currently?
Yeah. So, we work through schools and other youth serving organizations. So it's flexible enough that it could exist as part of the school day or as an after school program or before school program. It is going to be implemented as part of camp counselor training for a couple of camps this summer. But it's typically in those spaces that are, think of it like homeroom or kind of your study hall impact period. So they're able to, those are places where they're all still together, but there's a little bit more flexibility in terms of how they spend their time.
Okay.
So that ranges anywhere from what age group are you typically targeting?
Yeah. So we work with mostly teens.
Okay.
So as young as 12 through, we've had, I think, a 20-year-old.
Okay.
Most of the youth we work with are in the 14 to 18 range. But sometimes they work with students who are a little bit younger.
Okay.
And how would an organization come to identify that they wanted to implement a program like this?
Yeah, oftentimes it's an organization that already is trying to do something like this. Maybe they're trying to get a mentoring program off the ground, or they hear their students saying, or their youth saying, we really want some way to support each other, but they don't have any structure to do so. And they don't have any, supports that would make it so that it's both safe and confidential, and that you're really building the skills in the youth to be good mentors.
Mm-hmm. So is a lot of your organization centered around teaching mentors how to implement the program and administer the program?
That's right. Yeah. So the curriculum is designed by the youth to support the youth in becoming good mentors with a focus on mental health.
Okay.
But it's really, really basic things like effective listening skills, or how you identify what your emotions are. What do you do, when you feel angry at school? What are some of the things you can do to avoid getting into an argument or a fight? Things like that.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. Just in chunky steps, maybe, what would it look like to actually, I'm a guidance counselor at a middle school.
Yeah.
And I run into you. It sounds very interesting. What would the implementation of that kind of look like for them?
Yeah, so we work with them to identify the best way to implement it for them. And it's different every school. I can give you 2 examples.
Please do.
So in one scenario, it was an alternative school where the older students had maybe just a few credits left that they were working on to work towards graduation. So they had a lot of time where they were at school, but they didn't have academic programming to, coursework. So they had 2 hours in their day where they could spend working on this program. So they would, every week, they have some sort of training session, which is where the curriculum happens. That's where they're practicing those skills with each other. And then the rest of the time, they're meeting with mentees to kind of put those skills into practice. So that's like the mentoring component of it. And that happened in an extended lunch period. So that
Nice.
when the mentees were coming, it wasn't, disrupting their academics at all. They were coming during their lunch and they were having lunch together. In a different situation, we had during their homeroom or their impact period is when they had the practice session. But then the mentoring part is an after school club. So the mentors, they recruit mentees to join this club and they get to participate in that way.
So
but it really kind of depends. It's going to, it's different.
So in essence, they
So-
get a sponsor
Mhm.
who's facilitating the education and support thereof. But yet, to your point, they've created a club or an organization themselves
Yep.
that has kind of legs of its own, if you want to call it that.
That's right. Yeah, we help them get it set up. We provide them the initial training and the curriculum, but then they run the program. It's theirs.
Is there
Nice.
any interaction after that kind of handover point with the organization then?
They can. We sometimes will do ongoing coaching, but they don't have to. Or they can. There's additional curriculum that they can access through our curriculum portal. To like support or they're like specialty topics or things like that, but they don't have to. They've already got it set up. They can continue to keep that going.
Right.
Nice. What I mean, using those 2 examples that you've outlined, what did you see? How did you see the impact? What did you see happen after? Because I'm sure this isn't easy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for whoever it is, right? This is
Right.
because it's probably a little new.
Yep.
A little different approach than
Mhm.
everything else. But then once they kind of get the hang of it, what have you kind of see happen?
Yeah. So some of the interesting things, like themes that I could say across all situations, the staff liaisons, the adults, are really nervous in the beginning about releasing that control to students.
Sure.
And they worry about confidentiality and they worry about, like something about danger. Well, first we're like, well, we put guardrails in place so that those things don't happen. But ultimately, it's usually the students who are the ones who are protecting some of that information from, like getting spread as gossip or
Mhm.
what have you. They're the ones who are like upholders of the,
Interesting.
that relationship, which is really interesting. They really take that seriously. And the other thing we have noticed is just an overall reduction in the time that youth are spent outside of class because of disciplinary concerns. So sometimes the mentors they'll see them in the hall, their mentees, and they're like, what are you doing in the hall? And so
Right.
they'll prevent that. Then their mentee, they look up to that mentor and they don't want them to see them in the hallway for behavior issues anymore.
Right.
And they may actually in the moment go
Sure.
and help them
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yep.
Sure. And,
Yeah.
and did you see, post COVID, big deep breath, right? I mean, what did you see happen after COVID?
Yeah. The biggest challenges that we saw were in absenteeism and just a reluctance to engage with each other. And I mean, it kind of
even in the group setting
so it
or
I-
just as a general student
Right.
body.
as a general student body.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say then we definitely had to work a little harder in the beginning
Sure.
to create that space where they did feel comfortable interacting with each other.
I think we had that in adults too.
I agree.
We
If you
still
think
have
about
that.
I
it,
think it's
Right.
still lingering.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. We had months where we were told to like avoid interaction.
Right.
Well, what did we think was going to happen with youth? Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or, we had months where we were telling them you're going to interact over this device. And then all of a sudden we say,
Yeah, please put the device.
yeah, it's tricky.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of paradigm shifters.
Yeah,
For sure.
So when the group is initially forming, how much of that is, building safety in the group so that they feel safe to actually contribute at a level that can, one, let the group know they're being authentic, but two, then reciprocate back to the entire group.
yeah.
So where it creates more safety in the group, where like they understand people are being authentic and transparent to a point where it can be helpful to the person that's sharing, but also to the group at large.
Right. It takes, so we have 3 weeks in the beginning where the mentors meet just with each other. And a lot of it is laying that foundation where they become comfortable with each other. And we also model for them how they can do that with their mentees.
Oh, interesting.
And then as they first start, and then it's kind of like a gradual, they start working with their mentees just once a week, maybe. And then that increases over time. And honestly, I think it happens faster than we think it will often. And I think that is partly because pretty early on, the mentors will share something. They'll have a moment of vulnerability where they'll share some struggle that they've overcome. And that alone puts the mentees at ease to go, well, this person is doing well now, but they've gone through some things,
Yeah. Yeah. Establish some trust.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the origin of 1 in 5.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. 1 in 5. So,
or the name, I should say.
So 1 in 5 was named around in 2021. And at that time, the statistic was that 20% of youth wrestle with mental health struggles or a mental health condition. Now it's actually 1 in 5 considered suicide in the last year. So it's actually worsened in that short amount. I mean, that's just 3 years ago.
Sure.
What are the main contributing factors to the explosion of growth?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we don't know. And it's also one of those situations where no one, it's not easy to say, well, it's this one thing, and then there's like correlation versus causation.
Right, yeah.
Sure.
But we are noticing that things really there was a tipping point around the time that everyone had access to smartphones. So right around the, early 2010s. So 2012, I think we really started to see that plummet. And it has to do with the quantity and quality of social interactions.
Sure.
And so that for us, that is a lever. So we're saying you can have healing through social interaction. And we believe that that's a foundation. Social health is a foundation of a mental and emotional health.
So in some ways, are we kind of coming full circle and coming to the realization that this wonderful device that went off when we started, right, that maybe it's not the end all for everything?
Yeah, I think.
Do the kids get that, do you think? Or not
yes
yet?
and no.
Okay. Yes
and no. I think they understand it, but the devices are designed for us to want to interact with them. And that's hard when you start engaging with that pretty early on, or maybe that's been a primary way that you've interacted with people, like learning how to do that in different ways. But they always say that I'm always surprised in the curriculum. I thought that they would have all kinds of technology woven throughout it. And no, they really wanted it pretty analog. They wanted to be able to, have role plays and go through scenarios and play board games, things that I think we assume that they wouldn't want to do, and they do.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it's like anything. It's like a pendulum. Like, we may see that start, the Surgeon General just put out an advisory about youth and social media.
Sure.
We've got to find the middle ground. It's not going away. And we can have a healthy relationship with it. But I think, we have to figure out what that looks like.
Maybe reframing. The device is a tool.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, it's a tricky. Yeah, it is partly about framing what you use it for and saying that. I mean, I think it's kind of like anything that can be harmful to us. I think the more that you say, don't do this is awful, the more they're going to want to do it.
Yes.
But
don't touch the hot stove.
Right. Right. But if we talk about the ways that you can use it that are healthy, or how to just become aware of when it's becoming
There you go.
unhealthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice. I mean,
Because then they get to make their own criteria.
Yeah.
Frame it for them, how it works for them.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple does a horrible job, but I think in general, it also, screen time.
Yeah.
Just screen time alone.
Yeah.
Of, hey, remind me how much screen time I had. And it always is pretty shocking.
It
right?
is.
And
Yeah.
I consider myself a light user, but other people just, we're talking 30 hours a week
Yeah.
type things, and those kind of things. But then to your point, 30 hours of good content may not be so harmful as 30 hours of awful whatever, So
Right.
again, it's what you do with it.
Right. And it's at the expense of what? So
Mhm.
Great
if it
point.
means that you're not interacting with your peers or your family,
Sure.
well, then that's probably a little imbalanced. And the quality of the interactions you're going to have
Hmm.
with another human are different than it is with a human through a device.
Sure. Nice.
Yeah.
Tell us
Yeah.
what you see, in the next 2 or 3 years. What do you see happening?
Yeah.
For your organization, business, and everybody else in general.
Yeah.
It's in your space.
So like for youth mental health. Okay. Well, and I can say too for on like what we see happening in schools
Okay.
too. So I'll start there. It's really, there's been a big push for more career connected learning. And that's not something that's new. We've been probably hearing more, but like it's been in our consciousness for a while.
Sure.
But there's new diploma requirements, and there's just more of an emphasis on, is what I'm learning actually tied to what I'm going to need to do in the future? And along with that, we've heard youth have an increased interest in learning about pathways that they don't typically learn about in school,
Mhm.
including mental health pathways. So there is a group of youth who were convening this summer to consider design of what a mental health careers exploration pathway might look like for
Okay.
high school. And I think that we're hearing about that in other neighboring states too. Like Michigan has that. Ohio is exploring it. So I think we'll start to see that more, which is really encouraging because
Sure.
there just is not the workforce to meet the demand.
Right.
There never has been. Now it's
Now
worse.
it's even
Yeah.
worse.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I think that, that can foster the empowerment of curiosity,
Yeah.
right? Which can be done through exploration.
Yeah.
When given the opportunity to explore.
Right. Right.
Do-
Absolutely.
I think that, that I think it works hand in hand with what you were talking about earlier. Kids leading it
Yeah.
Right.
because they're genuinely curious and they're empowered with the tool sets to actually be curious and get energy from it instead of dreading, going and learning something that's completely meaningless and disconnected from any
What they're doing.
any real meaning. In their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do
Yeah.
you think here in Indianapolis, obviously, I think the Indianapolis Colts have, breaking the stigma. I forget what the slogan is.
Yep.
But,
Kicking the stigma.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
I knew
Yep.
it was something.
Yeah.
Football, right?
Yeah.
Do you see, one, that message is kind of getting through? And then two, do you see it continuing to where we kind of eventually do get over it? Right. I mean, it's a hot topic like everything else,
Yeah.
but some use it for, I call it maybe a cudgel, and other people truly have a need and they need, and they need to deal with it. So I'm just kind of curious what you see.
Yeah. I am encouraged that it is a part of the conversation broadly. In most places, you hear it come up now. I don't think that it's enough. I think one, you're right.
Sure.
That is, not everybody has a mental health condition, right? But everybody just like everybody has a physical body, everybody has a mind,
Sure.
and everybody needs to learn how to care for it, and it needs to be healthy. And so I think that's where I hope to see the conversation start to shift. Okay, now we're talking about it and we acknowledge that it is something. And now what do we do with that? And how do we cultivate, healthy living that's both for our mind and our bodies?
Gotcha. Zinger question maybe, but what's the top thing you would say, if I've got one thing to tell a youth, right? What would that kind of one message be, that if I'm only given that opportunity, I got one shot, right? and
Yeah.
we know they're in, let's say they're maybe not in a crisis, but just have, they admit to you, I got some stuff I got to deal with.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
I think
Right?
that when I think about when I was going through that as a teen, I felt really alone and isolated. And I think that's even worse for youth now.
Mm,
When I was growing up, I talked on the phone to my friends all the time, or I saw them. I went out and, rode my bike over to their house or
Right.
whatever. And kids just by and large do that at a much lower rate than they used to. So and these interactions that they're having over social media can kind of enhance that isolation if they don't feel like they're a part of it. And so I would tell them they're not alone. And
got it.
there are let's find your others. Everybody has their others. Let's help you find yours.
Love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are your community mentors and mentees, or do they become advocates in a way for the expansion of 1 in 5 and the awareness and in adoption by new organizations and communities?
Well, we're still small enough that I don't know that I can say broadly that we have seen that yet. Although in the spaces that we are working, that is absolutely true. They are the ones who now will say, I know so-and-so at this other school, which may be in the same district. They would be a great mentor. Is mentoring happening? Is this
Right.
1 in 5 mentoring happening at their school yet? And then they also identify other youth who they believe can benefit from it.
Right.
They're like, hey, so-and-so, I know what they're going through right now, and I experienced something similar. Are they eligible for that? That's what they often ask. Are they eligible for that?
Sure.
What is the answer to that?
The answer is always yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, and especially it is interesting when we're first starting to work with school districts and they want to, or youth serving organizations, they want to identify the mentors. They always go to the youth who are already overextended or already in the Key Club
Right.
and are in the band and, already have a full schedule. And we try to encourage them to think more broadly.
Sure.
Who are those youth who you really think have something to offer, but maybe aren't participating in a lot of other activities? And this would give them a sense of purpose that they really need, and they have something to offer in a
Nice.
way that maybe those youth who are really involved, it's different than what they have to offer.
Right. So if I was a school or with a school or other organization that was looking to bring this program in, what's the pathway to open it up inside the organization? What's the process?
Yeah. So how do they have a 1 in 5 program at their
Correct.
school?
Yeah.
So the best thing would be to go to our website. So it's easy, 1in5.org, all spelled out. And click on the programs. And then that tells you about the different programs that we have. And then there's a contact page there, and we'll reach back out to you.
Sure.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then once they have done that, is that I think you and I have talked about in the past that, it's one thing when the counselor or the teacher wants it, but you also have a school district and superintendents and principals and counselors and those kind of things. So, is there a good way to make sure that becomes a support versus a barrier for someone who's interested?
Yeah. I think that if if looking at the website and looking at the programs, you believe this is something that your school can benefit from or your organization can benefit from, getting the support of your leadership is pretty crucial. And also, I think usually the barrier is, how will this fit in to what we're already doing? And is it safe? And if we can help you figure those things out, so I think it's building the trust and the support that we will, ensure that those conditions are met.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
What's been your biggest challenge so far?
Biggest challenge? That is a really good question. I do think that this, like figuring out how, and it's, even if there's an interest, it's how do we fit it into something that already feels really full and busy.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have a group of youth who are really interested but they aren't the ones who get to call the shots about what their day looks like.
Correct.
But we don't really give them the space to do that. So on the one hand, we're trying to empower them, but on the other hand,
But they're
they
not
don't
yet.
have, they
Right.
don't have the agency to do a lot of that.
Right.
So
So do you think the mechanism to move that needle is policy, or do you think it's, ground
Awareness. Yeah.
ground awareness, by the youth? What do you think is going to move that needle, or both, or other things?
I think awareness will start, so we have 9 new districts that will be implementing this, and that's going from, really 2
Two,
to then 11.
Mhm.
And I think we'll get a much better picture about how, what that looks like. But that gives us a sense of those are all districts that came to us.
Right.
So we know that they want it, and they have to just be willing to, figure out how to make it happen.
Right.
Sure.
So I think it's mostly an awareness and being able to see that other people have done it. It's hard when, the only examples that you see are ones that won't work. So the more
Oh, wow.
examples we
Great-
have,
Great point.
Yes.
the more they'll be able to identify where how their organization fits.
Sure.
What are you looking forward to in 2025?
We are also going to make our curriculum more widely available through an online curriculum portal. And so districts or organizations wouldn't necessarily have to do a full mentoring program. They could decide that they already have this, program or club, and they want to build these skills, specific skills.
Integrated into their existing.
Right.
Sure.
So I'm really excited to see how that gets used. We were asked a lot about it. And so now I'm excited to see how districts and organizations actually use it.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Thank you.
So again, what's the website address for everyone?
Mhm. It's 1in5.org, spelled out.
All spelled out.
All spelled out.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate you being
Yeah,
here.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.